the Antichrist in Islam, which is basically the antithesis to Jesus, is who we call Al-Masih ad-Dajjal, which in Arabic translates to the deceiver, the deceitful Messiah, I believe. Let me just quote. I have the on my notes here. The deceitful Messiah. Now, the evidence for this is through the Hadith Corpus. It isn't necessarily referenced in the Quran in itself. So then you have a lot of Hadith rejectors or other people who may say that, oh, there may not be an Antichrist. I do take the position that there's too much evidence on today's earth for there to not be an Antichrist. Everything just points for the fact that there's going to be this Messiah figure for a certain group out of a certain occupied state. Now, that, if you research it, that Messiah is actually not supposed to be from the lineage of David, like Jesus was from the lineage of David, as Brother Eric brought that up. And as Muslims, we also believe that Isa ibn Maryam, or Jesus, essentially the son of Miriam, was from the lineage of David. And so he's not going to be from the lineage of David. He's going to commit all these miracles that are going to be mimic the miracles Jesus did, and he's going to claim that he was a prophet sent from God. Then he's going to claim that he is God himself, and he's one of the greatest evils that is will ever occur to man in existence. And he's supposed to be here for a short amount of time, like I believe 40 days, but there's going to be a distortion in time apparently where there's going to be like one day is like a year or 10 years, and then another day is like months, and then slowly after that, and how we believe is there's going to be somebody called Imam al-Mahdi, which is supposed to be this imam figure who leads the armies against the Antichrist, and then Jesus comes down, prays with him, and then Jesus ends up killing the Antichrist afterwards. Now, funny story is if you read into Jack Parsons, he's the man who invented rocket fuel that shoots up rockets into space. As a couple of my buddies who may be watching this, Rubiani, Lord Bear, and Suleiman might say space isn't real, but I personally don't take that stance myself. But he, accompanying Parsons, he did an oath of the abyss, was his own oath of the Antichrist, which was witnessed by Wilfred Talbot Smith. In this oath, Parsons professed to embody an entity known as Valerian Armilius al-Dajjal, the Antichrist, who and come to fulfill the law of the beast 666, Aleister Crowley. Viewing these oaths as a completion of the Babylon working, Parsons wrote an Iliast autobiography entitled Analysis by a Master of the Temple, and a cult text titled The Book of Antichrist. In the latter work, Parsons, writing as Beleriand, prophesied that within 9 years Babylon would manifest on earth and supersede the dominance of the Abrahamic religions. Technically, that did happen, but anyways.
So yeah, I want to go to First John chapter 2. This is a warning against the Antichrist. Dear children, and this is, yeah, John. Dear children, this is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. This is how we know it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they did not belong to us. For if they belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us. I don't know if they. I don't believe personally. I think the things that are said in the Book of Revelation are make it clear that the Antichrist will be made known. Like it won't be like some hidden thing, but it will be made aware. But I do think it's important to what John said in First John chapter 2 is that there have been many antichrists that have already come. Not the Antichrist, but many that are you know, Antichrist, and the the magnitude of how much people hate Jesus, how much people are opposing what God has commanded. I mean, you see it in our society, and people are living life thinking that you know who they are and how they are is who they're meant to be, but really, it's just a sin, right? Um, you know, God calls us to love people, right? He calls us to love one another, right? And just because I love, someone who may not be a believer doesn't mean that I am, I am, and I'm not going to judge. I'm not the one who's supposed to judge. Um, but to like to I'm not going to enable the sin or and stuff like that, right? So I'm not going to um do those types of things, right? And so I think the magnitude of it is showing more and more and more. And it's interesting because, obviously we weren't in the times like, let's say, 100 years ago, right? So they may have thought that, that they were in those times, right? But it's getting worse and worse and worse. Where, I mean, it is kind of hard to discern, right? But um, Jesus says, in I believe in Matthew 24, you know, only the Father knows when that time will come, right? When when all of it is over, and it's time for the day of judgment. Not even Jesus knows, right? Even in the beginning of the book of Revelation, what I read was God gave Jesus this message, gave him this vision to give to John so that he can share it, right? So I think we're seeing, I think we've been seeing for a while. Um, um, and I definitely can't give. I don't know, and I don't think you asked this, but definitely can't give you a time on when it's going to occur, um, because I'm not God. um, but yeah, I think it's being made very clear that the opposition towards Christ is growing and growing and growing, and it's been a growing thing for a long time. Even when he was on Earth, the opposition was fierce, and with people, with the Jewish people, right? Which, and not to say all Jewish people, right? There was people who were, Jesus even says, for salvation has come from, when he's talking to the Samaritan woman, that salvation has come from the Jews. Not all of the Jews didn't. Not all of the Jews didn't believe in Jesus, right? There were some who did, there were some who weren't, right? And so it's kind of how it is today with us, right? There's people in America who don't believe in Jesus, some do. There's people in other countries, some do, some don't. And so I think the opposition has gotten bigger, right? A lot of the opposition that Jesus faced at that time was from the Pharisees, teachers of the law, a lot of the Jewish, some of the Jewish people, right? Um, but then once his word is spread throughout the nations, that opposition grows. Um, and as people embrace sin more and more and more, there's just this conflict, which is, refers back to that spiritual warfare, um, mentioned that we were mentioned that that we talked about earlier. It's a very big thing. So yeah.